What's the most unbelievable, wait, you don't get this, moment you've had with another adult? I had to explain to my coworker, M33, that the sun always rises in the east and sets in the west. After I told them that, they said every day. I was driving with my boss one day, and the setting sun was directly in front of us. He said, "We must be driving directly south." "West," I said softly, "the sun sets in the west." "But south is where hot is." When I was a teenager, my mum was convinced I was doing drugs. I needed to wee, and even though I was only in the bathroom for, 30 seconds, I came out, and she was like, "Aha, got you." She said she knew I was doing drugs in the bathroom because I was on my period and I didn't have time to change my tampon while I was in there. I told her I hadn't changed my tampon because it had only been in for like an hour. Then she asked how I had peed without changing my tampon. That's how I learned. My mum didn't know that the urethra was separate from the vagina. I told her I just moved the string out the way. She was adamant that it's impossible to pee with a tampon in because then the pee wouldn't come out. She was about 50 years old at that time. She still didn't believe they were different holes. I had to go onto the computer and pull up a diagram, and she still refused to believe it, stating I think I would know if I had two different holes. Anyway, a few years later, when I did start doing drugs, she had no idea. My mum was convinced I stole the vegetable peeler for use as drug paraphernalia as a teen. Mind you, I was doing drugs at the time, but it did not involve the vegetable peeler. To this day, I tell folks about it to see if maybe they can come up with a way it can be used to help consume any drug. Funny thing is, it was stuck behind stuff in the drawer and found when we moved. I still have it 30 years later. Because you need it for the drugs you're doing? I was somewhere between 12 and 16 when my mum laughed at me for saying there were 3 holes down there. She said she used to believe that too. I got embarrassed and assumed I must be wrong, until I learned years later that I was correct all along. She's almost 70 now. I wonder if anyone's ever told her. When I was in 5th grade, I asked my mum if getting your period made you feel like you had to pee all the time. The look of horror on her face was priceless, and she proceeded to explain about it being different holes. I replied that I knew that, but they are very close together, and I feel like I always have to pee. And there was blood in my underwear. She asked to see my underwear, and then she immediately took me to the doctor. Kidney infection. I was pissing blood. Oh my God, that sucks. As a new father, I'm glad I can lurk these subreddits and aggregate a great deal of info to help my daughter. 'Cause holy fuck, women's bodies really try to kill them at random sometimes. No, seriously, they do. My mum told me once she didn't have a vagina because she got a hysterectomy. She was 61. We still joke about it now. My best friend, when we were about 12 or 13, laughed at a joke about old people having sex and said they can't even do that. The pussy closes while, no shit, doing a book closing gesture with his hands. I've told that story to every single girlfriend he's ever had. I stopped dating a woman because she was convinced that she peed out of her clitoris. I sent her diagrams from textbooks. Nope. I sent her a picture of a real vagina where they labeled the parts, including pointing to the urethra. Nope. I sent a video from Hub where you could literally see urine coming from the woman's urethra. Nope. She said she must just be built differently than other women. I completely lost all interest in her. It's not just that she believed something wrong, it's that she stayed so committed to it in the face of overwhelming evidence. Her stream might have been weird and sprayed kind of onto her clit. I had that happen once when I had a UTI, and it legit felt like I was having a wee out of my clitoris. I'm not excusing her though. You showed her a literal diagram and had to search for golden showers on Pornhub. LMFA. My mum thought that women peed from the clit until she was in her late 40s. The frightening thing is that her job, which she had had for over a decade at that point, involves administering catheters to female patients. I'm sorry, but what? A person that didn't want to get solar panels because they were worried if too many people had them, it would use up all the sun. Are you in North Carolina? A few years ago, something similar to this happened. This sounds like something that you'd hear in an episode of Parks and Received during a Pawnee town hall meeting. Guy at my first base got a girl pregnant and didn't understand how. We asked him if he knew how babies were made, and he legit 100 believed that you could have sex all you wanted, but wouldn't get pregnant unless you were married. I know a couple who were very surprised she got pregnant during their honeymoon. They both thought people didn't get pregnant until after at least a year or two of marriage. When I was really young, like single digits, I thought that the woman got pregnant as soon as they got married. I also believed babies were born already wearing diapers lol. It was probably from some Christian book I read when I was a kid, but I thought that something passed from the man to the woman during their "you may now kiss the bride" kiss at weddings, and that the woman would just randomly fall pregnant after that. So I was so confused when my unmarried teenage babysitter got pregnant. I was racking my brain trying to figure out how she managed to recreate the wedding kiss without getting married. And then people wonder why we need proper sex ed. I just had to explain credit cards to my 73-year-old mother. She didn't know that by paying only the minimum balance, she was racking up interest charges. She also didn't know that you could pay a credit card balance in full each month. Like she didn't know that was allowed. It certainly explains a lot of my upbringing. My ex's father would pay extra on his credit card bill every month because, well, I never understood why. But he owed money on some equipment he had purchased, and was being charged interest and would pay the minimum. I tried to explain to him that he would pay less in the long run if he put more money towards the loan, and paying the credit card company in advance did nothing for him, but he wouldn't listen. He just shook his head, smiled, patted my knee, and told me he wouldn't have a credit score of almost 600 if he didn't know how to play the system. You don't sound nearly impressed enough with his credit score tbh. My God, he had almost reached the legendary status of being a 600 man. My friend and I did a survey for 10 each. When we were through, the guy made us wait because he only had a 20. We offered to just take the 20 and split it ourselves. He didn't like that. Then I offered to accept the 20 and give him $10 change so he could pay my friend. He stood and stared at me with the gears loudly clanking in his head for maybe 15 seconds. Then he says, "No, we're just going to wait for change." I love when this happens. I went on holiday. The rental company charge a ridiculous premium to clean your car if it's dirty. So on the final day, I took it to the car wash. The total was 275 pesos. I had broken bills, coins adding up to 325. I wanted the change as a 50 note. It took 5 minutes of arguing between the two people working there. They gave me my change, a 500 note. It's a super common con in retail to confuse the cashier by swapping change back and forth under the guise of helping them. I once watched in dismay some CCTV footage where a cashier that was serving someone for a single cheap item 3 or so ended up handed over 100 to a con artist doing it. The basics are super simple: act confident and make the other person doubt what they believe. I once had a CO worker who was quite religious and, in all honesty, not overly blessed with intelligence. Tell me, she'd had to RAHOM'd her cat. The cat was an unaltered female cat who was allowed outside and got pregnant for a second time. I asked her why she didn't have the cat fixed, and she said she shouldn't have to. The cat should know better than to be out whoring around, and she would not have an immoral cat in her home. I started to try to gently explain how cats work, but then decided the cat was better off elsewhere. ETA, I told my partner about this post and was told I need to add one more fun detail to this story. The cat's name was Angel. Really? Angel, and she was a white kitty. Did she think animals wait for marriage? Did she think animals wait for humans to marry them? My friend's dog had puppies, and they kept 2 of them, one boy and one girl. After about 6 months, I asked when he was thinking of getting them fixed. He looked at me like I had just insinuated his grandma was doling out $2 blowjobs at the train station, saying they're siblings. They'd never do that. I told them they absolutely would, and even messaged my veterinarian friend who confirmed that. Yes, they will absolutely bang if left to their own devices. He refused to accept that until about a year later, when the dogs had 6 slightly off puppies. My former roommate did this exact thing with cats. Decently intelligent guy too, but he didn't grasp the concept. Then, when he caught them in the act, he admitted, "Okay, I guess I was wrong. But it's not like she can get pregnant from her brother." I've had so many conversations with adults who do not understand how government benefits work or hell, how their own Medicaid works. And I have talked to a few that didn't even know they were on Medicaid. They never questioned why they never paid for doctor's visits and medication while also not paying anything for health insurance. I have seen someone ask for $10,000 in rental assistance, thinking that their local human services office can just hand over 10 grand to everyone who asks. They also deny they are in the exact same position as people they loudly complain are freeloaders taking advantage of a system. So it's alright that you get food stamps, daycare assistance, Medicaid, Section 8 and gas vouchers, but God forbid someone you decide you don't like gets half that. The insurance thing. I remember in 2016 how many people even said, I don't have Obamacare. I get my healthcare through the ACA. Well, the people currently that have had their own food stamps impacted and don't understand that that's part of welfare, it's baffling. I even saw someone the other day say, the president can't possibly be a felon because felons can't be president. I truly think that what some of these people are thinking is that their individual situation is special. They are a part of the group that actually deserves this assistance. And because they actually deserve it, there is no way their benefits would get cut. They were told the people they didn't like would lose benefits and didn't bother accepting any more information past that. They don't understand the position they have put themselves in because they don't even understand why they receive assistance. They don't understand that they get help because they meet a certain amount of qualifications, which means anyone else receiving those benefits also meet those qualifications. But they don't want to be compared to other people accessing resources, because people who do that are bad, apparently. Fundamental attribution error. People tend to attribute another person's misfortunes to that person's character, e.g., being lazy but their own, to situational factors outside their control. This, of course, 100x if the other person is a member of an outgroup. I was in the Air Force for 10 years. Most important documents in the Air Force are PDFs. I lost track of how many times I had to show someone CTRLF. It was like watching cavemen discover fire. It astonishes me how often people don't look up whether or not they can do X. Not that they don't know how to do X, but they don't even wonder if they can do X. Then, of course, they don't go searching for if or how X could be done. I feel this in my bones. I was pretty good .at making Excel do the things I wanted. And this amazed people. Bro, I just Googled how to in Excel and then followed the directions. My dad could not comprehend how people could just be poor, not have health insurance, or emergency savings, or a retirement account. I tried explaining the boots theory and his response was to just buy the good boots from the start. I used to have a housemate that said something like this years ago. The government here in Australia was matching voluntary superannuation payments. So, like, if you voluntarily topped up your super by 500, they'd kick in 500. Good scheme. My housemate turns to us and says, so how much are you guys putting in? The other housemate and I just looked at each other and we're both like, we can't afford to do that. We lived in a share house, FFs. To just assume we had the money was a bit much. She kept on at us. No, but it's a good investment. You'll see the money again and interest, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't understand. This is a good use of your money. She couldn't wrap her head around the fact that we weren't withholding our own money from super. We just didn't have any money. She couldn't understand it. So take it from your savings. We don't have savings. Get it from your parents. My parents are just as broke as I am. Worse, my housemate said. My parents are dead. Her response, oh, I'm sorry. So take it from your inheritance then. What inheritance? He says, I don't have one of those. Your parents didn't leave you any money? How selfish of them. Where did their money go when they died? What about their house? The icing on the cake was when he explained more gently than I would have by this point that his parents hadn't had a house to leave him, because they had rented. That's when she was like, OMG, why would they do that? Where did all their money go? Over the course of an hour, he and I basically established that she genuinely thought all families just had piles of money, property, investments, etc., etc., like they were just things that magically appeared for everyone as they went through life. Actually, working hard for stuff was a foreign concept to her, and low-paying jobs were just stuff people did until they matured and got real jobs. Not matter how we explained it. She didn't want to understand. We gave up in the end. This is giving. Poor people should just go to an ATM to get more money. He wasn't that dense, he just never struggled. The irony is though, when he was a baby, my grandfather was in a car accident ending his night shift as a cop, and this was before any sort of workman's comp. He was in a full body cast. They had absolutely no income. They relied on friends, family, other cops to provide meals to survive until my grandfather could go BSCK to work. My ex was convinced that tampons were inserted, and then you yank the cord like a fucking ripcord, and it inflates up in there like a goddamn lifeboat. He really, truly believed that with all his stupid idiot heart. TBH, I'd buy those. No more random leaks, but easier to get in and situated than a cup, until you have to pull it out. No, you see, there's a second string that you pull that deflates it, and it's like a blood-soaked whoopee cushion on the way out. I had an in-law try to tell me how morally reprehensible people were in third world counties who do the Minningtree Cuttingents at environmentally damaging practice here. And she wasn't talking about the companies or the leaders, but the basic workers. When I said people will do pretty much anything to be able to feed their families, she just responded that they should let their families starve to death instead of cutting down trees in the rainforest. And that's what she would do. Reminds me of my dad, who said all Russian soldiers are evil for falling for Russian propaganda about Ukraine, including Russian prisoners who were drafted against their will because, according to my dad, they should just make more of an effort to be better informed. Now, what makes this truly stupid is that my dad is German, not German-American, and his dad fought for the Nazis in the Second World War. I pointed out to him that unless he also thinks his dad was evil, he's being a massive hypocrite. But according to him, that's different. He couldn't explain why, but still refused to change his opinion. The amount of people that don't understand how a graduated tax system works hurts my brain. No, your entire salary doesn't get taxed at a higher rate because you went just over the limit into a higher tax bracket. I see this so frequently. I've had adults who've made it to near retirement think that getting paid over a threshold isn't worth it as you end up with less money overall, not including benefits, etc. You may lose. I have a family member who swears up and down their paycheck got smaller after a raise because they were in a new tax bracket. I've told them many times that either A, something changed with your contributions, or B, there was an accounting error. But either way, they should bring it up with our. But nope, they insist that it's because of a higher tax bracket. And I think they like the idea of being right more than the extra money. I've made someone fully pull up their pay stubs to show them that they aren't losing money, and they still insisted they somehow were. I can't find the original comment, but someone explained it as filling a teacup over a drinking glass over a pitcher. As the teacup fills up and overflows, it fills the glass that overflows into the pitcher. You're only paying the higher tax rate on the overflow. They explained it better. Tax brackets are progressive, not regressive. If you make $200,000 in income, 23.85 will be taxed at 10, 73.1 will be taxed at 12, and the remaining 103.05 will be taxed at 22. Think of it like a teacup suspended above a glass, suspended above a bucket. You can pour water into the teacup, but it will eventually overflow into the glass. The glass can hold more water than the teacup, but will eventually overflow into the bucket. Then, at the end, you have a full teacup, a full glass, and a partially full bucket. Anything extra you add is going into the bucket, but the stuff that was originally there isn't going to suddenly fall into the bucket. In this analogy, the teacup is the 10 bracket, the glass is the 12 bracket, and the bucket is the 22 bracket. The water is your income. Back in the olden days, when checks or checks for my continental friends were commonly used, I had a signed check in my desk drawer for a delivery I was expecting. I foolishly didn't have anything filled out, relying on my employee to fill it out when the delivery arrived. Unfortunately, her bum of a boyfriend found it first, and the first thought in his head, that could only hold one thought at a time, was free money. He was confounded when he discovered that cancelled checks were returned to the owner. He had made it out to himself, cashed it, and was shocked. I tell you, when he was arrested, the amount of adults who don't understand the concept of compound interest never fails to astound me. Compound interest is great, but the first 200 years are the toughest. I'm a construction worker. I was out in a field inspecting for a dirt crew, placing storm pipes in the ground, and one of the guys looks up at the sky in awe. He says, "Holy shit, guys, the moon is in the sky during the day." He was dead serious. He thought the moon only came out at night. This is a man with a wife and kids. Maybe he never looked at the sky growing up. He had forgotten about the eclipse that was a few weeks before it. The whole crew gave him crap all day, pointing out obvious stuff like clouds and shit. Dude, how can a cloud come out? It's a sunny day. The eclipse a few days prior really was the nail in that guy's coffin. It never occurred to me. But this is now one of multiple people I've heard of who didn't know the moon could be out during the daytime. Lol reminds me of the story my high school astronomy teacher liked to tell, how shortly after being hired he was stopped by another teacher just making small conversation, who asked him, "Hey, so tell me why you can't see the moon in the daytime?" They happened to be outside. Astronomy teacher looked up and said, "You mean that moon?" He of course wouldn't name which teacher this was. Just say the teacher does still work at the school and thank goodness doesn't teach science. Oh boy, had to tell a principal what dildo meant. A kid called another kid that on our way outside, and I pulled him aside and he told me he didn't know what it means, so I just told him we don't call people other words, especially when we don't know what it means. My principal asked me what happened, and I told her the situation. She said, "What's so bad about that?" Apparently, she thought it had something to do with an armadillo. My wife's sister had an assignment where she had to add a new character to a story they had read that year, so she wrote a charming tale of dildo baggins. That started a hilarious chain at their small Catholic school of getting in trouble, calling the next person in line, then having them to pause to explain what a dildo was. Their mum hates the story because it ended with her having to explain to her own grandmother what a dildo was. Trying to train people at my last job, I couldn't even get either of the guys under me to stack pallets properly. They'd constantly be throwing pallets into the pile upside down, sideways or broken, then just keep throwing more on top until they had a teetering stack above their heads. I also had a hell of a time trying to teach them about stacking cases in pretty basic patterns and interlocking. I ended up making templates in Excel to try to demonstrate. One of them would still build multiple pallets into each other all the time, although he did seem to grasp the concept of interlocking at the point. I've always just tossed my trash out the car window. What do you do with yours? Hold on to it? I used to work with attorneys. I'm in law school now, so I guess I still do, but fuck this old job. I had and was floored by the number of attorneys who don't know how email works. It explain. I was emailing them a link that would take them exactly where they needed to go, and they'd put me on hold to get their secretary to come operate their email for them. I just the other day got an internet email was sent by my staff at 10 o'clock in the morning on Friday. I got it yesterday, Tuesday. Why? Because it got tangled up with all these things going on the internet commercially. They want to deliver vast amounts of information over the internet. And again, the internet is not something that you just dump something on. It's not a big truck. It's a series of tubes. Former Senator Ted Stevens, now deceased. Back in 2006. I was standing outside my office building with a co-worker just chit-chatting when a gentleman walked past us with a dog wearing a service dog vest. She immediately said, "Thank you," fairly enthusiastically. The guy didn't break stride, but had a confused look on his face. I asked her what that was about, and she thought the vest on the dog indicated that he was in the service, as in served our country. She was thanking the dog. Freshman college kids renting apartment. Mice problem big US. City. Both exterminator, and I told them to keep food in fridge or hard plastic or metal container. Make it difficult for mice to find food and they'll go elsewhere. We also put out a couple of traps. Go back a week later and they had an opened box of cereal next to a mousetrap. Still experiencing mice. When I reiterated putting food in hard containers to deter mice, they thought they would catch the 1 or 2 mice with cereal and be done. Had to explain there are millions of mice in the city and catching one was not going to solve the problem. I had a couple of roommates who wouldn't put the trash, and we got mice. I informed them we had to clean up the mess, take the trash out regularly, and set traps. One soft-hearted roomie was fine with everything but the traps. His suggestion was we just leave a little food out so the mice would stay under the sink. I had to explain that all that would do was guarantee more mice. I work in an office at an apartment building. Mice extermination is a free service that is offered. I had a lovely old woman call me to let me know that she had mice upstairs. Okie dokie. I'll send over the exterminator. Oh no, just let the mice know they need to stay on the patio. I feed them sunflower seeds there. I had to explain to a grown-ass lady that feeding mice brings in mice. And mice don't speak English, so you can't politely ask them to leave. Every time my mum drove the car while snow was falling, she'd comment about how windy it was outside, even if there was no wind. I tried to explain that it only looks windy because of the speed of the car, but she insisted that she was right. I pointed out that the wind always blew toward the front of the car, no matter what direction we were traveling. I pointed out that the wind mysteriously stopped when the car stopped. None of this made any difference to her. Oh, so much. I've met adults, like in their late 30s, 40s, who don't know what a tracking number is for shipping packages, who don't know how to use libraries. I've seen this in more young adults lately, who don't know how to use email. As a library clerk, Lord yes. I feel sad for people who don't realize a library card is free. I had a friend this happened with. He came to the library with me and freaked out when I basically just walked out with a stack of books and audiobooks. The library had a self-checkout system, so you just had to scan your card and put everything on the counter and it would get scanned. He couldn't believe it was all free, and I just went in and out with whatever I wanted. He had library experience because he spent time in high school studying there after school, but never used the book checkout feature. The one near me has passes to stuff like the zoo and museums you can check out for free admission, and even some equipment like 3D printers, sewing machines, digital cameras and other stuff you can use, and even schedule a lesson with a librarian or volunteer with how to use the stuff. Libraries are an amazing community resource. I was chatting with an older woman. She mentioned a shark attack at Cape Cod and said, "It's such a shame. I don't know why Mass doesn't do what Florida did." Confused, I said, "Oh, what did Florida do?" "Oh, they built a shark-proof fence all the way around the whole state." I just kind of blinked at her. I'm picturing the vacation conversation that caused this. "Oh no, Grandma, it's okay to swim. Florida has a shark-proof fence." I don't understand that shit. I mean, where does the sun go at night? When talking to someone about the relative size of planets, my sister-in-law's boyfriend, much younger than me, Gen Z, thought post boxes were decorative or historical. He was astonished to hear that you could actually put letters into them and someone would come and take them out to deliver them to the recipient. Just after Christmas 2023, my now late husband and I were at the airport, returning from visiting my parents, who had loaded us up with gifts. The gate agent informed us that our bag was overweight and we would be charged something like an additional $200 for it. Realizing that one of the gifts from my parents was a large duffel bag, I asked how much it would cost to add a second bag. "Only $50. Great. Well, step out of line, reshuffle some of the load to the second bag, and be back in a few minutes with 2 bags of appropriate weight." My normally bright, well-educated and kind husband could not wrap his head around this, kept looking at and talking to me like I was an absolute idiot for suggesting this. The desk agent tried to explain it too. I was just like, I literally don't understand how you don't understand that taking things out of a bag makes it lighter. The charge is for each individual bag, not the cumulative total. Eventually, he agreed rudely but didn't seem like he ever got it. By mid-January, his behavior had become so erratic and often mean that I confronted him, believing he was having a manic episode. I'll spare the rest of the details, but he was dead by March of 2025. If there is a moral to this story, it's that I'd like to see more research done on the brain impairment caused by mania and bipolar disorder. There does seem to be some similarity in symptoms to Alzheimer's, but it doesn't appear that much research has been done in this avenue. I'm bipolar and it's fairly well managed, but you never can promise you'll never have an episode again. I told my wife the common signs of my depression and manic episodes to keep an eye out for. If she ever tells me, "I think you're manic right now," she's right until a doctor proves her wrong, since if I am indeed manic, I am likely not in a mental state to recognize it. Sorry for your loss. This is a good recent article on that topic. When an eloquent person suddenly can't form sentences, it's typically seen as a medical problem. But when an empathetic person suddenly withholds affection, it's perceived as an act of unkindness. The truth is that both can be the product of physical deterioration in a previously healthy brain. The first sign came in late 2018. Mark, then 52, was in a fender bender a few blocks from home and called Julia for a ride. When she arrived, he was not just surprised to see her, but angry. Why was she there? Who'd asked her to come? She was taken aback by his forgetfulness and more so by his hostility. Mark could be stubborn and confrontational. Over the decades, they'd argued as much as any couple, but this outburst was out of character. She chalked it up to nerves, reframing it as the weight limit is on the bag for the safety of the workers who must lift it. Really helped my family to grasp this. Was once talking to a co-worker about the age of exploration. He didn't know and refused to believe that you could navigate over land and water by using the stars and math as a guide. I once had to explain to my stepfather that the sun was not the biggest star in the universe, that it only looked big because we're close to it. Same guy also doesn't understand why people read. I have a CO worker who has somehow managed to hang on to her job for the last 8 years. We work in a professional setting where most people have graduate degrees. She has a very well-earned reputation for being an unreliable collaborator who just does her own thing no matter what. Last week, we had a walk and talk where she expressed absolute astonishment at the idea that decisions made in meetings serve to establish expectations about who will do what and what the timeline is. In our company, we say a meeting without actions and decisions is just a chat. Had to explain to an ex-boyfriend that there are such things as continents and there wasn't just Europe. He couldn't understand why Australia at the time and America weren't in the Eurovision Song Contest. Also thought the continent of Africa was in fact one whole country. His mind was blown when I showed him a map. Also had to get the history books out as he believed dinosaurs were made up and weren't real, had to explain evolution. He couldn't understand it.